in. It's good to see you. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're going to come up in three, two. Hey, everybody. Hey, hey, hey. It's the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you. I know it's a different kind of time today, but you know what? We're going to get this going. We're going to get this going right here on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody, please like and share, like and share, like and share as you come in, like and share, like and share. Let's talk about DC statehood. You know what, Kelsey? I'm going to come up in 30 seconds. Everybody, like and share, like and share. Thank you for the icon. Fabulous. Thank you, Miss Gogo. All right, everybody, like and share, like and share. And when you get there, I want you to, we're talking about the vote. We're talking about all of these things that are happening in the United States at this time. One, two, hey. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. Let's talk about DC statehood as DC has been taken over by the federal government. I told you it was not going to stop in Washington. Next stop, Chicago, a city that, more than quadruples Washington in population. How is that going to work? Washington and Chicago are different cities culturally. I'm wondering how this is going to work. And given that the Pentagon has a memo that the Washington Post reported on about a week ago, they said, look, in order to tamp down or stop civil unrest, whatever that means, is that a demonstration? Certainly it sounds like a riot. But in order to tamp down civil unrest, the federal government plans to use the military. They're also blatantly misrepresenting crime in Washington. Washington crime has gone down significantly since 2023. Everyone knows that the world was thrown into utter chaos and turmoil during COVID. We were locked down really for 2 years, which is not just unusual, it's unnatural. We are human beings who are social animals. That having been said, we are coming through that storm, and it's been tough. But Washington, D.C., they have gotten a lot of things under control. So now, why is the city locked down? And it's easier to lock Washington down because they are not a state. If you think DC statehood is just something that people are talking about, or it sounds like a pipe dream, no, it's not. It was also known as Chocolate City. Now it's known kind of for being kind of swirly because it's become gentrified, and it becomes more gentrified, it becomes whiter. That having been said, it's still a black city and it has a progressive tilt. You could conceivably have two real progressives go to the US Senate, a real voting progressive in the US House of Representatives. That has not come to fruition. And not to mention that we have a member of the Cherokee Nation, Kim Teehee, who should have been seated as a voting member of Congress decades ago. That has not happened yet. Think of who's excluded. Think of the states that are large in landmass, but very, very small in population, at large members. But they have a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives. So let's think about that. What does D.C. statehood mean within the context of being taken over by the federal government? I mean, it's almost nullified the mayor. So what does that mean? Well, I've got someone here who has been fighting for DC statehood. She is on the front lines. Indeed, she is the director of Free DC. Well, it's Free DC, but DC Vote. They need a vote. And long live Go-Go. She is the founder of that. Go-Go is the music. Hey, I went to Howard. I lived in DC for a while. You don't get it until you get it. Do you remember Spike Lee's movie? That's right. And, doing the butt. That's right. That's right. That was Go-Go. And when you get to Washington, it's go-go all day long. You might not think you love it because you get to DC, you will be on a whole different beat. And she's a DJ, but she's also someone who uses the music, who uses her art the way Curtis Mayfield used his art, the way Dick Gregory used his art, the way Aretha Franklin, Roberta Flack, who was out of Washington, the way they use their art to uplift, to free people. And so we welcome her to this show today. Miss Kelsey, talk to us. How are you today?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing well. Happy Sunday. Praise God. Thanks so much for having me. And I am, blessed and highly favored to be here to share this, word of political enlightenment, in this case, about what we have going on in DC. And I do want to I know it's a lot of titles up there, so I did want to, briefly go over all of them. I'm Kelsey Adams, Executive Director of Long Live Go Go. Shout out to founder of Long Live Go Go, Yada Yada, and one of the co-founders of Free DC. It's four of us there: Alex, Kea, and Nene Taylor from Harriet's Wildest Dreams. And then I'm also the organizing director at DC Vote. And DC Vote is the only nonprofit in the country whose sole purpose is to fight for the full autonomy of DC residents. And they've been in existence for about 26 years. So happy to carry the torch of organizing and making sure that the word is getting out about our fight here in DC. So just wanted to say, blending all these facets to faucets to talk about DC statehood and how we can uplift our struggle here in DC and have the rest of the country kind of get in this demand for full democracy for the United States. And I wanted to start with what you were talking about because I know folks are seeing, what's happening in the news right now, and that is that takeover. And so the federal government, not the federal government, the federal law enforcement agencies have seized control over our city. And this is true that it is because we are not a state. So the lack of full autonomy, we do have what the term is called home rule, in which we have a mayor and a city council. But because we don't have the full autonomy, we suffer from something called congressional oversight. And so now, the federal government is able to come in and overturn what we see happening here in D.C. And so, in this case specifically, there are clauses in what the federal government can do, and one of which is the president can override local governments and seize control under emergency conditions. And so this will be a 30-day period where the president will be in full control of law enforcement in DC, which will be MPD, our local enforcement metropolitan police department, as well as bringing the law enforcement agencies in from the federal side, which would be the FBI, the DEA, ICE agents, and all that we're seeing as well. I want to be clear about two things. One, DC is already the most policed city in the world. The fact that the capital does reside here and the United States itself being the hegemonic country, we have, one of the biggest, presence of police forces and law enforcement agencies for protecting that. And
Well,
then
but
two,
hold on. I want you to stay right there for a hot second because that's key. Because there is no place that you go in Washington, Miss Kelsey, where you don't feel a police presence. You've got the most powerful people in the world at any given time who are in Washington D.C. and you feel it. So
yeah, their presence is known. The Hoover Building is walkable. Like you walk down Pennsylvania Avenue from Gallery Place, you're going to see that building. It's not
it's in
can't
the
miss.
middle of the city.
It's huge.
It's right
The
there.
federal buildings are the biggest buildings in the city. So,
Right.
it's really how they're framing this narrative is that the community here is who needs policing, and that's clear by the idea of calling this public safety, which goes into my second point, which is crime is down in DC. It's actually at violent crime is at a 30-year low for DC. So this is the lowest we've seen violent crime in 30 years, as well as they want to pinpoint carjacking specifically. And carjackings are down a whopping 26%. And the year only has 4 months left in it. So we're doing a pretty good job there. But more importantly, the attorney general did uncover that this whole thing, again, is unlawful. And what we do know is a felon is in the White House. And so the fact that this whole takeover is unlawful, and the opportunity is being again seized. I like to use that word while Congress is in recess, and again, which goes back to the fundamental root of the situation is our lack of statehood, because we again have no representative to stand up to federal takeover, federal autocracy, this authoritarian regime. We have nothing to stand against this because of this lack of statehood. And so it just kind of goes back to the racial injustice we see here, because I like that you highlighted that this is chocolate city, still 46% black and brown, and like you said, we have larger populations than two states, and to think that we don't deserve the same representation as somebody in Vermont, and someone in Vermont, no shade, they don't have to respond to anything that happens as far as Congress is concerned on
Mhm.
the heels of Washington, D.C. So, again, if we think about January the 6th and a successful insurrection, the only thing that was successful about it is the fact that we can refer back to it being successful and the lack of statehood being the reason why. And let's be clear, the mayor was not able to call the National Guard due to us not being a state. So, the one time we could have stood up for the whole country against a fascist takeover, we couldn't. And that it boils right in the root cause here, which is that lack of statehood.
What is Washington feeling like right now with ICE, the FBI, National Guard, and a federalized police force? What does it feel like? Because most of the arrests, I understand, are black and brown people.
So the unhoused, which is a predominantly black and brown community, they are disappearing. Our unhoused neighbors are disappearing off the streets, and we feel that. We go outside, and what used to be a community of 10 encampments isn't. And so, with that, doesn't go unnoticed. And parallel to that, we see our restaurant workers afraid to come to work because they might work in the back kitchen and may not have, the same opportunities as everyone else. And so again, they're afraid to even walk out their homes. And if you've been watching, what's happening on TV, we have vehicles being pulled over coming out of parking lots from Home Depots and Lowe's. And so it's clear who the target audience here is. And so we feel that we're scared to go to Home Depot at this point. And so,
Because Miss
what?
Kelsey, let me say this, because I think it's important for us to really have some context for this ourselves. More black people, if we're going to go there, were sent or brought over to Central and South America than were brought to the United States, North America, in the slave trade. So when you go to South and Central America, you see yourself over and over and over again. So when I walked down Columbia Road, I've looked, I was in DC a minute. So I know the streets. Everybody was speaking Spanish to me. I mean, because it's just that kind, and that was 40 years ago. Okay. It's that kind of city. It really is the capital city. It's everybody's up in there. But the only people with all of those colleges and universities in Washington, because everything's in DC, they have a lot packed into that district. Okay. S About 6 or 7 of the major universities just in the district alone. Alone. I'm like, it's very clear that the black and brown communities have been targeted. And I've been reading reports, and I need you to help us to understand if this is true, that young people in particular say that they feel less safe now
Oh, and that's
than
exactly
before.
where I was headed. Is the if you've been watching the news, yes, that's exactly that they echo the exact same sentiments on the streets. This isn't something that we're joking about. And through Free DC, we've hosted Know Your Rights trainings where thousands of students and our youth have joined, and we've seen now they're posting it on social media as well. They're knowing their rights and they're coming at them with all the information we're giving them in the training. So kudos to all the youth who have tuned in to those trainings and are exercising their rights on the streets.
Well,
Um, and, and
what do you train them to do? I mean, what are you telling them to do? Are you telling them to carry ID? I mean, what are you telling them to do?
oh yeah, so you definitely carry your ID, but you get to ask certain questions. Like there are things like that you specifically get to ask, and actually we have a pamphlet so that they can, and it's a
Mhm.
downloadable situation. So if you follow us on social media at the Free
No, honey,
DC.
you need to share
No,
because
I'm
what?
about to share. No, I was just saying I'm going to
Because
say
they're
what it
coming to
is,
Chicago.
but I want folks, if they want to get back to it, like if they
Yeah.
don't get it, I want to, but I'm pulling it up because I want to read exactly what the verbiage is that you
Well, I want to know because we've got to, when we had the Michael Brown and the George Floyd protests, Palestinians saw what was happening to Black Americans, and those kids started messaging our young people in the United States. They said, "This is how you need to deal with the police." It's amazing because they know the game. Plus, many of our police have been trained over in Israel, so they've been trained to occupy. Sadly enough, that's happening in all 50 states and territories. And so it's important for us to know how we need to deal in this moment because with a militarized police force and ICE and the National Guard and the FBI on our cities, that is chilling, quite frankly.
well, the first thing it is, and the first thing is that folks need to know that it's happening. So we have number one thing to do is film the interaction. So you're always able to film no matter what. You can pull your phone out if you before arrest begins. So I want to be clear about that as well. So before they are saying placing you under arrest, soon as you're engaging with the police, if you feel like it's about to go left, if you got that gut intuition, you got a feeling, the same way they have a body cam on, you can also have a body cam on. You can literally hit record on your phone. They cannot stop the recording of your device once they have started the process of arresting you either. But the first thing you want to do, so if you get pulled over and he's walking up to your car and you like, you know what? Boom, I'm gonna just go ahead and record. Put your phone up there and record, and you can point to it. I'm just letting you know I'm recording this. I'm not sure if you have a body cam on, but I want to have my own body cam on. Also, you can have the cameras in your car. I know my family, we have them, so they have these things on Amazon now. Well, not Amazon. Go to the actual place and buy it. Please don't shop on Amazon. But please, slight blow. But go buy the cameras for your car because you can have that as well, and it can record it as well. But soon, the first thing you want to do, get that phone out, get it recording. And if you see a neighbor or it's happening to someone else, if you see maybe a car pulled over on the highway and you want to get out your car and pull over as well, do that. But the first thing you want to do is pull the phone out. And if it's you yourself in the situation, the second thing we're doing is asking, am I free to go? And make sure you use the word free to go. So then at that point, they have to engage further. They have to say no. They have to tell you why. Like, you need more information. If you're unable to leave the situation, mind you, your phone's already recording. So now you're asking, am I free to go? At this point, they need to tell you if you're free to go or not. Now you're asking, why are they stopping you? Or, you're having this dialogue with them. And if they ask to search you, number three, you say, I do not consent to a search. So you should not agree to do anything.
Hmm.
Say you do not consent. You have the right and do not consent to a search. And stand on that. You don't have to do anything else. And mind you guys, your phone is still recording all of this. Also, now you said both of these things. So out of your mouth, you asked them, are you free to go? Now they done told you no, and they still got you standing there, and they want to search you. You said I do not consent to a search. They're not. They're not searching you. They're like, okay, we're gonna hold you here for whatever, whatever, whatever. Now you're just gonna be quiet.
Don't say anything else.
You're not saying anything else. They say, whatever they say, you want a lawyer. You take your public defender at that time, or you gonna call your lawyer if you got one. But however you want to do about your law situation, you do have public defense out here, so don't even worry about it. But at that point, you tell them you want the lawyer. Your phone's still recording, and you're not saying one word.
Okay. Because you have the right to remain silent.
You have the right to remain
No, no.
silent.
I'm trying to roll with you because it's important for us to understand
But you
that.
don't remain silent. So don't be quiet when he walk up to you. You do have to respond. You do have to, again, am I free to go? You need to get a response from that. And let him say hoopa laba laba laba. If it's all that, well, if he bribing you to do something, you letting him do that, you waiting for the yes or no if you're free to go. Now he told you you're not free to go and he want to search you. I do not consent to a search.
Hmm. I think it's important for us to really to understand what our rights are because we don't because this is where we are. I mean, we're in the space where we need to know exactly what to do because the fact is, most people do not have a lawyer on speed dial. I mean, you don't. But now, I mean, unless you are fairly affluent, where you have people in your circle can who can help you. That is not what most people have. And you know what, quite frankly, I don't care how rough and tough our children might pretend to be, they're not dealing with law enforcement. Being approached is unsettling. It is unsettling. You tell me, because I certainly want to get you back on the show, and I promised I would only hold you for a while. But yeah, now because I want you to come back, I want to be a woman of my word.
Well, I do want to add this one thing because you brought up that word
Absolutely.
occupation, and I have to be clear with this language again because words matter and this matters. So when they talk about public safety, because crime is just not a problem in DC, and mind you, I gave the facts about how it's gone down and all that good stuff, but crime is a problem in America. So it's coming to a door near you. So Chicago, and then New York, and then Atlanta, and then Detroit, and then all of our favorite black metropolitan cities. Remember, DC would be the largest black voting plurality in the country if it was a voting city. But it's not. We're here. We're family. Um, but they're going to use this term public safety. And so
Mhm.
that's very intentional. But I want to be clear about language. Those are not words of liberation.
Mhm.
These are words of occupation. And we have to be clear about what we're talking about here. This is a fascist takeover. And I know a lot of folks are against these isms and these words. I'm going to ask folks to take their time to look up this one and actually look up this and look at CNN for y'all got to look at it in maybe 7 minutes. And if you can tell me that that's not the same thing, then I owe you more than dinner. I promise you that.
I think we need to understand that. I'm bringing up Jim Narakis from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, Miss Kelsey, because when I want to, there probably are America's foremost media watchdog. And I can't really just say it's on the progressive side. I think that they're fair, really, no pun intended, fairness and accuracy in reporting. All they're asking is that you be fair, that you report the story fairly. And they have been very intentional. And I want you to meet uh, Jim Narakis, a brilliant young woman who is DC Vote, Fair DC. She is, of course, the go go queen in Washington, D.C., which is the culture, and I thank her for that. But Miss Kelsey is in Washington, Jim Narakis. And so she's living with this as they are fighting for D.C. statehood, because that is missing from this discussion. And they are blatantly lying on the people of Washington, D.C. Crime has gone down drastically. And it's done that in Chicago too. And yet we have this takeover. And I want you all to meet one another. I mean, just tell me as Jim Narakis comes in, how is this impacting people in Washington? I mean, has it been depressing? Has it been something that makes you all want to push back?
Oh,
What's
it's been more than depressing. I mean, we've lost our friends and family. We've lost neighbors. Our unhoused family is disappearing. Our immigrant neighbors are being we actually unclear about what's happening to them as well. Being deported, maybe, or are they being sent to camps? We actually do not know. And so we're just unclear about what's really happening here. The lies don't match the data. I mean, like we just stated, crime is down. Um, and it's really just clear that this is a fascist takeover. And I know you had wanted me to define that idea of fascism as it relates to what we're seeing here. One of the biggest pillars with fascism is militarized control. So
Hmm.
if you don't think federal law agencies being deployed amongst the streets of DC is not militarized control, I tell you again, I owe you more than dinner, because that is the definition of fascism. When they talk about law and order, those are the words that define what fascism is.
Hmm.
And so, because what we're seeing and what's happening to us, what we're feeling here in DC, but as the world is seeing, um, I think because when folks don't identify as what ism is, then folks try to say it may not be that. But the definition is exactly what we're experiencing here in DC.
Jim Narekas, because when we look at the news, we're not hearing her voice.
Yeah,
We're not hearing from the people in Washington. And you all pointed out that the Washington Post used to have another stance on this kind of action, but they've done a switch over. Talk
yeah,
to it. What are your findings?
yeah. It's really unfortunate that DC has as its major newspaper uh, a newspaper that's owned by a, a billionaire who is very eager to mend fences with Donald Trump. That is, I think, the main reason why he owns the newspaper is to leverage it politically, and he has decided that the political leverage he wants is the friendship and gratitude of Donald Trump. That's why he killed the paper was about to endorse Kamala Harris in the last election.
Mhm.
He killed that. Um, he's made it clear that uh, the opinion page is going to be very restricted in terms of what kind of issues it can address. He doesn't want anyone who disagrees with him on the page. Wants to appeal more to conservative audiences, and the conservative audience he wants to appeal to, I think, is mainly in the Oval Office, because Amazon is not only it sells the leading online retailer, but it's also a major military and intelligence contractor. Gets a very large amount of its profit from selling cloud services to the CIA, to the Pentagon, to organizations like that. And so he's got a very direct financial interest in being on the side of the government. And this government has made it absolutely clear that they are in the business of rewarding their friends, punishing their enemies, and Bezos wants to be one of the friends. And so when Trump is using DC as a demonstration of his power, and I think it's important to realize that this is not about fighting crime. This is not about public safety. This is about showing the president showing that he has the power to put troops in the street of a major American city, to do with whatever he wants them to do. And I don't think that this is going to be the last city that he occupies. He is seeing this as a pilot program, and is going to be rolling this out across the country. Indeed, he already has. And the Washington Post, which you'll remember that Trump sent troops into DC in his first term during the Black Lives Matter protests,
Mhm.
and the Washington Post had a very different reaction then. It expressed appropriate alarm at the idea of militarizing, federalizing police power in the United States, because that is something that is not, a federal military police is not compatible with democracy. And this in this second go round of this occupation, there is very little criticism coming out of the Washington Post. The basic attitude is, well, there is crime here, and that is as if that is his motivation for sending the troops in, and they offer him suggestions about better ways that he could deal with the crime problem in DC. but very much accepting his rationale, accepting his right to militarize the streets of the capital. There is very little resistance being put forward by the Democracy Dies in Darkness paper, and that's unfortunate. You come to see Democracy Dies in Darkness as more of a mission statement for the Post. This is their goal rather than the thing that they're opposing.
And and Jim and Miss Kelsey, what is unsettling is that in fascism you have a melding of the state with state power with corporate power. And when I saw all of these, Jeff Bezos, his now wife, and Mark Zuckerberg, his now wife, and all of these people on the front row, I said, oh boy. And Palantir, Vape King makes a brilliant point. I have to say it. With Palantir building a database on all Americans, and we're losing our Fourth Amendment rights rather quickly because they're all coming together. We see you don't have true freedom on Facebook. You don't have true freedom on X. I mean, these are supposed to be. They're supposed to be public utilities. Because functionally that's what they are. I mean, if you want a job, you have to be on LinkedIn because people study your digital footprint, all of that. And yet it feels like we're being controlled, Jim, and we're being observed. And now you have the Washington Post, which for Washington is the paper of record. I mean, you talk about the New York Times. When I was on my way to college, my father said the great thing about Washington, he said, global news is local news there. And so everything of consequence at that time, and even now, in the United States and the world, it has to pass through there. So it's a very interesting city. And so the Washington Post is a very interesting newspaper. And to see them flip on this and almost report the Pentagon memo saying that this is how we're going to handle civil unrest. And nothing else was said about it, Jim.
Yeah.
How do you read that? No pun intended. I mean, what is your understanding of that? What does that say to you?
Well, I think that they have really given up on the idea of being a check on government power, because that is not in keeping with Jeff Bezos' business strategy. He owns this. He owns the Washington Post outright. It's not part of Amazon. It's Bezos' personal possession, and it is essentially a prop for him. You can imagine getting a newspaper if you had all the money in the world like Jeff Bezos did. You can imagine buying a paper to try to make it the best paper that you could. That is not his objective. He's bought this not to spend money on journalism, but because he thought that a journalistic outlet in the nation's capital would help him accumulate money in his other enterprises. And you don't get to be a zillionaire on the level of Jeff Bezos without an obsessive desire to accumulate wealth, and that is what he has. And he has decided that making his paper into it's not a Trumpist outlet. It's more of a don't worry about Trumpist outlet.
Mm-hmm.
It treats Trump as a sort of normal part of the government process that one shouldn't be alarmed at, and you should accept the idea of federal troops being put in to take over local control of the nation's capital as just the kind of thing that happens. Don't worry about it. That's the message I get from the Washington Post.
If you can engage in some media education now, I mean, because you see this magnificent campaign that Miss Kelsey and DC Vote and Free DC and all of these organizations have, they're grassroots organizations, so they're down on the ground with people. I know growing up in the civil rights movement, you had a media education arm. You know, you would write newspapers, you would write and call radio stations. There's a reason that they changed the communication system for the Capitol after the collapse of the economy in 2008, because when Americans found out that our government was being held up for more than $770 billion due immediately to Goldman Sachs, they broke the system, right? And what do you advise people to do now? I mean, and Ms. Kelsey, I know you know what to do, but I want you all to have an exchange, because I think it's important for us to know what it is that we as citizens, as consumers of the news, what we can do. When my brother was at St. Albans, when both of them were there, everybody went to prep school but me. I don't feel left out. I went to public school and I'm good with that. What was interesting was that, and St. Albans is interesting because it's at Mount St. Albans. It's the National Cathedral School for Boys, which is the National Episcopal Church's school for boys. And you got some of the most powerful people in the world there. And I only say that to explain this. They are taught to write letters to the editor in grammar school and high school. That is their assignment. Because Miss Kelsey, they're trained to run the world and to pull the levers as they see fit. I mean, so my brother coming out of in high school was writing letters to the editor that they would occasionally publish at the Washington Post, because they were very well written and they were pointed, and they were critiqued by their teachers, who were really professors, on that. And you know what? And that works. So, I mean, what do we do? I mean, because I know we're not powerless. I mean, what do you advise us to do, Jim? Because somebody's got to get the story right.
Yeah, I feel like well, it's important to talk back to the establishment media. I think the more crucial job right now is to build up alternative media, to build up media that are covering the grassroots resistance to the occupation, rather than giving cover for the occupiers. There is such a resistance in established media in general, not just the Washington Post, to people taking hold of power for themselves. That runs contrary to the whole ethic of established media, which is that news is what powerful people do. We've got our ear to the powerful people. We will tell you what is the powerful people are saying and doing. It is not about finding out what people are doing for themselves and amplifying that. That is really the last thing that media want to do. We did a study last year of the Palestine protests on campus, and one of the most striking things about it was that across established media, hardly ever did they talk to protesters. The idea that you have these protests that are becoming a major political issue, they're becoming a national issue. The federal government is getting involved. And do you want to know what the protesters have to say? No, that's not part of the news assignment. The protesters are basically wildlife that you observe from a distance. They're not people who you allow to participate in the in the conversation. And I think that's what we're seeing in DC now as well. That the voices of DC residents, particularly the voices of DC residents who are organizing to resist the occupation, they are not going to be given a microphone by established media that consider the government to be the legitimate source of power, and the public is supposed to be consumers, to take part in every 4 years you can vote, but aside from that, you should stay in your seats and see what the powerful people are going to do. So you want to find those media outlets that are talking to the grassroots, that are spotlighting the resistance, and listen to those people and support those people, because those are the people that you need to form an effective response to what is a fascist encroachment on democracy. The Washington Post is not going to do that for you. We need to find our own outlets that are going to do that.
And I think we need to understand that, these companies, Miss Kelsey, were set, of, for, and by the people, of, for, and by the oligarchy. They sell to us, but they give to us their message, right? So, Miss Kelsey, I mean, I know that there's a wonderful radio station in Southeast Washington, D.C. How are you getting the message out? Because in social media, they jam up your algorithm, right? And I mean, how are you reaching people?
Well, good shout out to WEAC Radio over in Southeast. My boy Kimo Freeman with getting the word out for us
Mm-hmm.
locally all the time. You got the radio stations. Um, but I will also say, lucky for us in the Long Live Go Go space, we actually do have a good grassroots. And I'm so sad that I really hate the word grassroots because it makes it seem
Mm-hmm.
like I'm in the trenches, doing it out the mud. Even though that's what I am doing, it just don't sound that sexy. I always say we need to find a sexier word for
Well,
grassroots.
just say, what? Say foundation.
Foundational work. Yeah, that's what I like. That
It's the
sounds much better.
foundational work because everything will be built upon that. How
Yeah,
about that?
well, and as we're doing that foundational work, because we're building with the actual people, like free DC spaces, again, we're almost at 20 some thousand folks who are actual DC residents who have went
Hmm.
to an orientation to say they want to stand up to the regime.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, so we actually really do have our what they call that song boots on the ground. But
Hmm.
I do like that point you made, Jim, about that local media and uplifting the local media as it's catching us doing the
Hmm.
work. Because fortunate for us, we have banded together in DC, and our community has come together, and joy, has not been stolen from our people. And so, like the beautiful protest that we put together on Thursday with Long Live Go Go, where we had TOB band fill the streets of 14th and U with beautiful music. MPD worked with us to shut the street down, turn it into a pure block party using Go Go music as the official music of DC, but also the politics and culture intersection to mobilize the people. We need more folks again covering that. So I like, uplift the folks that are covering it. But if you're covering something, you follow our page and you make sure that you directly know where we are so that you can come and you can get the footage yourself. We always, want to do interviews. We want to have conversations. We'll come to stations. We're doing all we can to get the word out. And I know folks are oftentimes annoyed about, people from other places saying, we need you to call this person to help us. Well, guess what? We don't want to ask you to call anybody anymore. We would actually just like to handle it ourselves. So, again, solution based, Kelsey, that I am, give us DC statehood so we don't have to ask you for anything. We can control all our own vessels throughout the entire city.
Jim, what is mainstream media's pushback? Well, I guess they do on DC statehood. I mean, it's like they don't take that seriously at all, or maybe they do, and they really don't want to have that conversation. Jim?
Yeah, it's a shameful thing that DC has been lingering as a colony for so long, and I think that the idea of DC as a kind of a powerless group of largely African American people is something that's a big part of the symbolism of Trump sending in the troops. He is sort of glorying in the idea that he can send troops into DC and no one can stop him because DC doesn't have any real political power. And that is sadly there's some reality there. There's a lot of reality there. If DC were a state, he would not have the same ability to do this. So though he's gonna be testing that thesis in other states, as he did in California earlier. But he has tools ready at hand that allow him to federalize law enforcement in DC that he would not have if DC were a state. And you'd think that this would be something that the Democratic Party, when it was in power, would have done something about, because presumably, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, for those of you, my eyes just went up to. I said, "Ooh, yeah, no." I mean, really.
There were times when they had the power to put through DC state. It would have given them likely 2 more senators, another representative, which you think would be an attractive thing. But the Democratic Party establishment, I think, is so identified with the DC establishment, who like the idea of a city where the citizens have no real say in what happens, where the overseers get to make the final decisions on all things, and they don't want to give up that power. Which is the story of the American tragedy. Really, is that people in power don't want to give up any of that power, even when it's clear that a more egalitarian situation would be healthier and happier for everyone. But they would rather stay in crisis where they perceive themselves to have power in that crisis, rather than solving that crisis through egalitarianism.
Yeah, and then wonder why they lose the presidency. And then they come in and beat up, particularly on Black people. You did not vote enough. And I'm like, whoa. First of all, stop that. Don't do it. Because we over-index and vote for you. Okay? What you don't do, you got 900,000 Black and brown people who are unregistered to vote in Texas. Don't wait on the Democratic parties to do that for you. They're not going to do it. When Reverend ran, he did not. Keep referencing Reverend's campaigns because, looking back, they were brilliant. And he comes from a certain tradition. I mean, Kelsey, what he did, Jim, and you know it because you all monitored it, he brought his voters to the party. He registered them and brought them in, which is what you have to do. And you can't wait for the party because it's very clear it's 2 wings, 1 bird. Because somehow or another, we all end up at the same place all the time. In the meantime, that's not helping us. Washington, D.C. is an occupied colony right now. Walter Washington was their first mayor. He was elected in 1975, the first elected mayor. It was their DC was their playground. Was the playground of the powerful. It was almost like Havana used to be. I mean, oh my gosh. And that's a shameful statement about the capital of the United States of America. It's shameful, but that's what it is. I've got about 3 or 4 minutes left here, and I want you all. I want to start with you, Miss Kelsey, and then we end up with you, Jim. What do you want us to know, Miss Kelsey? And how can we be supportive of you? Because I promise you, I know, Jim, when these troops come into Chicago, and they're sending in the troops, they've said it. They're going to do that. We are really going to need to be in communication with each other because it's not going to stop in Chicago. They're rolling this out. If you don't think that this is real, if you don't think that the establishment are not worried, they're worried about the public's reaction. All you have to do is look at these congressional town hall meetings. The public are getting more and more restless by the day. Miss Kelsey, what do you want us to know before you go?
I want everybody to please, please, please tap into the movement. So long live go go. We're doing everything leading with go go music and art as the intersection of our movement there. Free DC mobilizing again, DC residents. We're almost at our quota of 3.5% of the population, which would be 25,000 folks registered to be in our community. DC Vote leading the charge on ensuring that locally and nationally we have organizations and we have the community, we have the faith community on board for standing up against everything. So we're sending letters to Congress. We're doing advocacy days and visits to the Hill to ensure that our voice is heard. So tap in across the board. If you don't want us calling your member, which I hope you don't, because you should want your member to care about what you have going on, tell that member to give us statehood as much as you can so that we can get out your hair and we can focus on DC and DC's full autonomy. I did want to add one thing when we were talking about the situation where we could have had statehood a few times. I want to be clear about just 3 years ago. Just 3 years ago, Democrats voted against DC. So Superman's not coming to save us. The Democrats, they ain't coming to save us either. We need you people to get up and get active. So I thank everybody so much. Free DC, long live go-go, and give us DC statehood now.
Amen. Jim Narekas, your final thought?
I guess the thing that I would want to leave people with is to remember that when Trump talks about crime, talks about cities, this is a pretext that crime in the 2020s is way lower than it was in the 1980s, 1990s. That we are living in a comparatively peaceful time in terms of street crime. That to the extent that crime is a genuine problem, and is a problem for people when they're affected by it. Armies are not the solution. Armies are not designed to fight crime. They're designed to occupy territory, and that is what is going on here. Is the occupation of what Trump sees as enemy territory.
And I just want to add to Jim's point, that is fascism. So the military should not be in your community.
And the corporation should not be propping them up.
Yep.
Because when you bring the corporate power and government power, that is absolute fascism. And you're bringing the military into it too. This is what we're dealing with.
And targets of black and brown cities.
That's right. And but it's coming to white people too. Anyone who stands up, they're coming for us because the least of these tend to stand up against power that is unchecked. But I promise you, when you have, that's why, the Democrats shut Bernie Sanders down because he was just a little too close to what the masses of people need. We have put a color on classism. But classism is what it is, but we've racialized it, and let's be very clear, racism is very real, very, very real, and anti-Black racism most of all, because that is the rub. We're the only people, Jim and Miss Kelsey, I don't need to tell you this, who cannot white our way out into whiteness. If you have a half-Black child, that child's Black blood's going to follow them for the rest of the generations. That's the way it works in the United States. So, but I'm fine with it because I'm not I'm not tragically black. I'm triumphantly so. I'm just saying that, we need to be real clear on what we're looking at. Because at the end of the day, anyone who stands up against that which is going to make life better for everybody, I don't care what color you are, they're coming for you. That's real.
Yeah.
So let's be clear on that, because we need to come together, all people, because they're coming for everybody. Remember that. We're going to talk about what this occupation could look like in Chicago in the next hour, and really in a few minutes. I'm going to get out of here, but I want to thank you, Miss Kelsey. Long live Go-Go, free DC, DC vote. I love it all. Part of me will always love DC, and I love you, Jim Narakis, and fairness and accuracy in reporting. I love you all. Everybody, let's go on over and let's talk about what this occupation could look like in Chicago. Chicago. This is going to be real interesting in this place. Chicago is a whole different kettle of fish. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show.